On the 7th of July 1915, the Italian leader of the army Cadorna called off the attack, and with that the first Battle of Isonzo was over. Over 25,000 soldiers were lying dead altogether on both sides after 2 weeks of fighting, yet the Italians had very little to show for this loss, regardless the numeric advantage. The Austro-Hungarian general Borovic, nicknamed the Lion of Isonzo, utilized his army and the advantages of the terrain well. And by this, he managed to hold the front lines against the overwhelming Italian force. In the first battle, the Italian army made the same mistakes as all other major powers in the beginning of the war, and tried to overrun the enemy trenches and barbed wires with mass infantry attacks, which only resulted in huge losses and very little gains. When the first battle ended, the Italians started to prepare for an even larger offensive across the Isonzo River, but did not learn from the earlier mistakes, so the plan was more or less the same. In the new offensive, the Italians pulled together the 2nd and the 3rd Italian Army with around 250,000 soldiers and around 840 guns. Cadorna's plan to break through the Austro-Hungarian lines was to use heavy artillery bombardment, then advance the Italian troops in a frontal assault against the Austro-Hungarian lines, then try to overcome the enemy's barbed wire fences, take the trenches, then conquer Monte San Michel and Mont Kosik, and by this opening up a route to Gorizia. However, the shortage of war material, and I'm talking about like rifles, artillery shells, or simple equipment to cut barbed wires, the lack of all these material almost completely nullified the Italians' numeric advantages. Facing them over the lines, the Austro-Hungarians only had around 78,000 soldiers and around 420 guns, but they had an organized deep defensive trench system. Also, Borovic was already a battle-hardened general as he fought and held back the Russians in the Carpathian Mountains just a year before he was sent to the Italian front. On the 18th of July, the Italians launched the attack against the Austro-Hungarian lines. After heavy artillery bombardment, the Italian 2nd and 3rd Army pushed into the Kars Plateau, where they found themselves against the Hungarian 20th Honvéd Infantry Division. They fought in close combat for days, and the losses were huge. The Austro-Hungarian High Command realized the size and importance of this attack, and they started to transport units over from Serbian and the Eastern Front to support Borovic's army. The Italians tried to break the lines and surround Gorizia, but the Austro-Hungarian units broke their trust, and some attacking Italian forces were pushed back all the way to their own trenches. But this did not stop the Italians, and they kept launching attacks over attacks, and eventually on 25th of July 1915 they captured the hill of Monte San Michel, which was north from Doberdo. Although this was not a very high hill, yet it was high enough to give an advantage to the Italian artillery to bomb the Austro-Hungarian lines. The capture of San Michel was vital for the monarchy's leadership, for the defense of the Isonzo front, so a counterattack was launched almost immediately, using the elite soldiers of Colonel Richter, and with great sacrifices, the mountain was recaptured. The Hungarian troops fighting in the epicenter of the offensive were trying to hold back the Italians, and this was the 20th Honvéd Infantry Division. During the fight, they lost 2/3 of their soldiers. On the north side of the front, the Italians did manage to push back the Austro-Hungarian soldiers and took Mount Patognica over Caporetto, which will have an important strategic value in the future battles. After 16 days of heavy fighting, the Italians ran out of ammunition, both sides were exhausted, and Cadorna ordered to halt the offensive. The Second Battle of Isonzo claimed many more victims on both sides than the First Battle of Isonzo. Around 90,000 soldiers died in a few weeks, while the Italians lost around 42,000. The losses of the monarchy amounted to nearly 46,000 soldiers, which is shockingly high casualty for the defenders. Although the Italians technically won the battle, the territorial gains of the Italians were minimal and they could not break through the Austro-Hungarian lines. After the second, I think we can call failure of breaking through, the Italian leadership decided to stabilize their front line and started to build a deep defensive trench system. At this point, they had to settle for a slow, grinding trench warfare instead of a quick win they initially hoped for. The Austro-Hungarian leadership recognized that Doberdo Plateau cannot be easily defended for a long time with the shallow trenches and weak shelters, as all this defensive line can be completely destroyed easily by the numerically superior Italian artillery units. Therefore, Archduke Eugen Ferdinand, who was the supreme commander of the front, ordered to build a more secure shelter and trench system by digging into the mountains for the army. The front stabilized at this point, and both sides were preparing for the next clash, which was the Third Battle of Isonzo. Thank you for joining me for this video, and see you in the next one.